What's up, everybody? That time of the week, it's time for the Sooners on SI podcast, episode 253. It's the one where Michael Hawkins takes over. That is what this is. I'm Ryan Chapman, your managing editor at Sooners on SI, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com, hanging out here in Moore, joined as always by the boss man, the legend, John Hoover up in the 918. How is 918 Hoove doing?
Good, man. We're experiencing some cool weather and some rain and some clouds, and I don't know what to do with myself, except for the fact that we could be going to Auburn, Alabama on Friday, where there's a hurricane going on.
I told the Hurricane, with all due respect, you are putting yourself between me, my Atlanta Braves, and a critical wild card matchup on Friday night. And so the Hurricane has arrived early and it is going to try and move on out by the time that we're in. We'll see how persuasive I was. You guys don't care about the Braves game as much as I'm going to force that down your throat, but you do care about Oklahoma and Auburn, which is what we're here to break down. A little bit later in the pod, we're going to get joined by Daniel Locke. He works with us, the Auburn Tigers on SI site, does a great job. We're going to deep dive on Auburn, everything going into them, so we can focus here on the Sooners and Hoove. Coming out of the game, post-game pod, Oklahoma had made the change midweek or mid-game, excuse me. Michael Hawkins came in for Jackson Arnold. Brent Venables had said they were going to evaluate that bad boy during the week, yada, yada, yada. We have a quarterback competition. We did not have to get through anything. Monday morning, the coaches filtered down to everybody. It's going to be Hawkins. Monday evening, Brent Venables announced that publicly on his coaches show. And then he rolled into Tuesday, boss, a 19-minute opening statement, a press conference that went a hair under an hour despite being slotted for about 40 minutes. We were talking afterwards, who I don't know if fiery's the right word. It wasn't contentious with the media. Usually when I say fiery, you think probably we ask questions, the coach is popping back. Brent Venables laid it all on the line. The coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball is under a bus somewhere alongside DJ Graham. It was, I told you, who, when we came out of that, if we were political reporters, we would have everyone written the column, "Today is the day that Brent Venables became president," because he basically was going, "It's on us, but I know what's wrong, and it's the offense, and we got to fix that bad boy."
Yeah, I think I saw a tweet from somebody like Gabe Eicher, right, who's got his finger on the pulse of the program, goes to practice, understands what's going on, and communicates it well. Well, Gabe came out and said, I feel better about Oklahoma football after that Brent Venables press conference. He's kind of right now a little bit of the voice of the fan, and I guess I get it. You're right. He seemed very focused. He wasn't fiery, like angry at anybody. He wasn't like resisting any questions or anything like that. He just seemed really intent. I guess is that a good way to describe it? It wasn't just I'm here, I got to answer some questions. What do you guys got? I mean, he showed up at exactly 11:30, and after talking for 50, almost 51 minutes, he says, "Anybody got anything else?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got something." So he was ready. He was up. He was ready to go, and I was impressed by that. And he took on all questions after the 19-minute press opening statement, which I told you he's going to talk forever on his opening statement as a effort to filibuster us and only get about 4 questions in. After 4 questions, he was at the 30-minute mark, and I thought, well, I'm not going to get my question in. Mike Houck hung in there, asked him if he could still take some more questions. Appreciate that, because there were some more good questions at the end of the press conference that needed to be answered. And I thought he did a great job. I thought it was one of his stronger press conferences. I thought last week was really good, and I thought this week was really good as well.
Yeah, you become body language experts, right? When
Yep.
you're doing this job for a bunch of different things. And I just kept thinking of the stark contrast. 2022 did not go the way anyone on the coaching staff wanted to go. And maybe it's because this is still the press conference ahead of game 5 instead of game 10 or things like that. But there were times where Venables seemed a rundown may not be fair, but it was a lower energy. There were times where, like, when people kept asking about simplifying things, it wasn't, it was like, how much more simple do you want it to be? It was, I understand your guys' job is to write stuff like that. That was not what Brent Venables was doing. And He spoke for 19 minutes, but I don't think it was like a traditional filibuster.
Yeah.
In his opening statement, Brent Venables was as critical as anybody about the own coaching staff's game plan. And basically, he almost went through. It was almost like he was predicting everyone's questions. Okay, I named Michael Hawkins a starter. Why do I want to name him a starter? I'm going to lay this out. You're going to ask me about Jackson, how he's handling it. I'm going to lay this out. We're going to dive into all that here in a second. Then he got over to the game planning and the offense and how they're not game planning at all. It sounds like, or not doing what they're supposed to do. Then he got into, here's Jacoby Johnson. Let me talk about that. I know I announced that. Oh, I need to talk about Auburn. It was almost like by the time we got through the first 20 minutes, we were re-asking or having him expand on stuff he already hit on the opening statement, which that to me is less a filibuster and more just he had a lot on his mind. He was ready to go and he didn't need the questions to hit the big points. Yeah. And that started right with the quarterback decision, laid it out there. Michael Hawkins is the guy. And I don't think you had to read between the lines too much. Brent Venables basically said it wasn't just the turnovers from Jackson Arnold. It was the manner in which the turnovers happened, aka one play after Oklahoma's defense gave them the ball. It was the fact that like the second fumble, lateral, whatever, is not even an option in the playbook. So it's a bad decision, compounding bad decisions, compounding bad and poor execution, all that stuff. And that basically that is why they're moving on to Hawkins. And that's why Mike Hawkins is going to get the job here or get a crack at it as he becomes the first quarterback since Troy Aikman to start a road game as his first start as a true freshman. Kind of incredible. 1984. It's been 40 years, right?
Isn't that something? Yeah. Right? 40 years. Yeah. Nice. I'll pull a Randall here. I was still in high school. 40 years ago. You had to go there.
Oh, but yeah, it's going to be Hawkins, and it's the right choice, Hoover. It is.
Yeah, it's absolutely the right choice. It's the only choice there was. To me, you can't leave him in the Jackson Arnold in that situation, continue to let him cook. You can't not bring your backup quarterback in on a Saturday night, which is the biggest Saturday night, arguably, in a home game in the history of the program. You know, first game into the SEC, Josh Heupel's coming back, trying to stick it in your face, 84,000 showed up and 84,000 pretty much left at the same time. Ryan, we were down there on the field at the end of the game, and as Michael Hawkins is going down the field, and I'm looking around and I'm going, there's no empty seats. I mean, maybe at the top where the Tennessee fans had not left yet, there were some empty pockets in the corners. But I was very impressed. And we've been covering this team a long time, 21 years now for me, and I've seen the student section empty out at halftime like clockwork. Every time, every game, doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter who's there, who's playing, what their ranking is. The exception being Texas Tech in 2008. They did not leave that game early. And this game against Tennessee, they did not leave that game early. So you set the scene, right? You set what's going on and how big this game is, how important it is, SEC opener and all that. And Jackson Arnold just comes out there and lays an egg with no help whatsoever from his teammates. Okay, I'm not going to throw him under the bus. I'll throw him under and then I'll pull him back out because nobody else would have done that. His teammates were not doing that for him. And I'm not knocking guys. I'm not saying they were, being mean or, agitated or angry or anything like that with Jackson. I'm saying he got no help from the offensive line. He got no help from a banged up receiver core. The running backs are still more Saturday night than ever average. The tight ends were very average. You had a dropped pass. You had a bunch of missed blocks. So what's Jackson Arnold supposed to do? I'll defend him a little bit. He's been uneven all season long, all 4 games. And one of the reasons he's so uneven, he doesn't have any playmakers around him. He doesn't have any offensive line that he can count on. So any quarterback is going to get in there and struggle. Well, you say that, and then Michael Hawkins gets in there, throws caution to the wind, runs around, does somersaults, flips himself into the end zone, lands on his head. I mean, that's kind of a little bit of a standard of what Oklahoma's offense needed to see from its quarterback, because Jackson, I think, was kind of stuck in this robotic, here's where things are and here's what I have to do and here's my reaction to this defense and here's my look at that. Sometimes you just got to chuck the game plan and say, screw it, I'm going to freewheel this thing. And Jackson's got the ability to do that. Michael Hawkins has the ability to do it. He actually went in and did it.
The issue is, though, Jackson freewheeled outside of the structure of the offense. Brent Venables, you go back to Saturday night, initially you talk about the lateral, and Brent standing there going, that's not even something that's in our playbook, that option there.
That was a weird.
That is what you can't do. You can try to create by yourself, all that stuff, and that's what Hawkins did with his feet. But to a certain extent, too, and this is not revisionist history. Go back to when we talked about the Temple game. Go back and find the post-game podcast. The one thing Brent said that he didn't love about Jackson there was some of the decision-making, the RPO stuff. That's been consistent all the way through. Every post-game, Brent Venables has talked about Jackson Arnold and poor decision-making on the RPO stuff, so much to the point where Brent was talking about, he used Danny Stutzman as an example when he was talking about the decision to mention Jackson Arnold. He's like, if Danny Stutzman, if I call this, hey, you're supposed to blitz, and he doesn't blitz, then we get a busted play. Then I call this, and he does something else that he wasn't supposed to do. And then I call this. Danny Stutzman's going to come stand his ass right by me because he's not doing what he's supposed to do. You flip that around, and listen, the PFF numbers show it. Hawkins was blitzed slightly more than Arnold was. Did Tennessee eventually shut down, go to a little bit of a prevent? Yes, I still stand by that. But early, why did they do that? Because Hawkins was able to get out of the pocket, hurt him with his feet. He threw the ball away a couple of times, and he clearly was not rattled. And so that's going to be something I'm fascinated by, because Michael Hawkins could be that cool character, cool under pressure, not rattled, makes quick decisions, and that could be who he is. And if it is, a lot of stuff's going to get better with this offense. Not the offensive line, things like that. Like, he's still going to have all the issues that Jackson had, but he'll be able to process through that because Jackson was clearly making slow decisions. What we don't know, though, is he was thrown into a point of the game where no one believed Oklahoma was actually going to win that football game. So there's no pressure, right? Hey, free will a little bit. You're already in a big hole, a multiple possession hole, all that stuff. That's not going to be the case when Oklahoma and Auburn kick off. He's going to be thrown into the game where at a maximum, he's down by 7 or something like that. If Auburn gets the ball first and scores, every decision is going to be under a microscope. We talked with Daniel a little bit later about, hey, it doesn't matter that Auburn's 2-2. Jordan Hare is going to be electric to start. Now, if Oklahoma can quiet it, it'll get quiet pretty quick, but he's still going to have to deal with all that from the jump, which that's the stuff we didn't get to see, because when he was inserted into the game, it was kind of a, what do you have to lose, roll it out there, and he just didn't commit the catastrophic turnover.
Yeah, and he was he brings also, and you know this just by watching the game and watching the playback and listening to Brent talk about him. He brings extra stuff. He brings an extra element to the game, to athletic ability. Jackson Arnold, a true dual threat quarterback. We saw him on that 24-yard touchdown against Tulane. Incredible play. We saw him on that 47-yard keeper. Read option, keeps it up the sideline, 47 yards. Incredible play. Great athletic ability. Hawkins has got a different twitch to him. Hawkins is a little more dynamic, a little more explosive, a little more elusive. Plus, he's still got that live arm. We've seen some of the throws that he made on Saturday night. 2 throws over the middle to Jaquez Petaway, and then the one on the sideline, I can't remember who the receiver is, but holy cow, over the shoulder, sliding inbounds right in front of the OU bench. Just an incredible throw from the right hash to the outer sideline. He's got the live arm. He's got the feet. And like you said or suggested, maybe he's got that Joe Cool mentality, that makeup that's going to allow him to be poised, because that's something Jackson lacked, is poise when things got sideways, whether it was blocking up front, whether it was a receiver dropping a ball. The next possession, he would come out and look not the sharpest, or necessarily hang in the pocket very long, or get out too soon, or whatever it was. There seemed to be an occasional lack of poise in his game that I don't think it's from being hit. Maybe it is. Maybe it's from being roughed up. He took his 10th sack on Saturday night before he came out. 10th sack of the season in 4 games, three and a half games. So that's too much. Hawkins took 2 sacks, and a lot of that is because he's holding on to the football. He's trying to make something happen. He's wondering why his receiver's not open, whatever it is. But Jackson may have gotten a little bit gun shy when it comes to the contact. I can't say that for sure. It's a possibility. It's a very common thing for young quarterbacks. But I just got the feeling that his lack of poise was due to external some external circumstance, some unforeseen kind of circumstance that we are not privy to, and we don't know what that is. We may never know what it is. He admitted. Remember, he admitted, I think, in spring football practice this year. Last year in the bowl game, it didn't feel like my team. It felt like DG's team, and I was still filling in for him. I don't, that's not where you want your quarterback's mind. And that was before the bowl game. He said he feels like his team now. That was, again, going back to the spring, and then we're talking to him in preseason training camp. So his mindset shifted. But if that seed is there to begin with, does it grow? Does it germinate? Or has it just been removed? I think maybe there was some of that doubt, some of that internal doubt that he had of his own game.
Yeah, it's hard to like pilfer through the mental stuff because that's what when quarterbacks are getting evaluated through the recruitment process, a lot of it, yes, your high school film, your high school tape, a lot of the camp stuff, what you're able to do, making throws, stuff like that. But no one really knows till you toss these guys out there with actual college defensive linemen, college defenses, all the detail that goes into it. One thing that I think was pretty clear from the first drive that Hawkins was inserted, which started with Branson Hickman doing the worst thing a center can do for a true freshman quarterback, which is snap the ball into the ground.
What a save, though. What a save.
Yeah, what a save.
Just 4 feet over here. Hey, if you're watching on video, I'm over here catching this snap. Jeez.
It reminded me of Caleb Williams against Kansas State. Do you remember the first evaluation that Lincoln ever had of Caleb Williams was, well, he's got to hold on to the snap first, and then you can go from there. It reminded me, although that wasn't that snap was Caleb trying to figure it out. Ray was never the best, most consistent snapper. For Hawkins, he's got to be like, this is my shot. Oh, God, what's happening? The first drive of the second half wasn't great. I think that was more to do with OU's offensive line. It still sucks. Newsflash, it's still going to suck on Saturday. That's something Hawkins got to deal with. But it felt like as the game progressed, Hawkins slowed things down slightly and grew into the game. I don't know if we, outside of the second and third quarter against Arizona, it looked like things slowed down for Arnold, and they were sped back up again as soon as Arizona scored again, had put some pressure on it. That was the fruit fumble, so it wasn't really Arnold's fault. He just is a guy that we talked about. He gets rattled, and it feels like it takes him too long to work out of that. Again, we'll have to see. Can Hawkins internalize that from the beginning, or was that a one-off? You're the backup. No one expects anything of you. All that. And it's something that Brent Venables kind of talked about. He was asked about it. They're going to, either way, this is going to be a big game. You're either preparing Jackson Arnold for his first road start. Now you're preparing Mike Hawkins for his first start, period. It's on the road. Neither of those guys have ever played at Jordan-Hare. So that's not a thing that's happened. But Brent Venables said, much like they have worked on Tennessee, they've sprinkled in some Auburn here and there all throughout the offseason, just like with all these SEC schools. So Brent Venables basically was like, it's our job as the coaches to make sure we're preparing those guys. But if Mike's been paying attention, is what he said, this isn't going to be the first time he's been exposed to Auburn. And that's going to be a big X factor come Saturday I think that regardless of how this game goes, we're going to learn so much about Hawkins' mental makeup. And there might not be any blocking in front of him. Oh, you may not be able to move the ball. It may not be his fault. But I think we're going to come out of that game knowing, is this a kid that's going to be able to handle the Cotton Bowl in 2 weeks? What's that going to look like?
Yeah, can you imagine true freshman starting against Texas? Which, by the way, we're told, Parker Thune asked me a couple of days ago, do you think this will be the first freshman to start against Texas? And I went through my list, and I go back to kind of the 1990 when Steve Collins and Cale Gundy were competing for the job. And I looked through all the names and numbers that I had, and I thought, I think you're right, Parker. So I asked, of course, the source, Mike Brooks, OU historian who bails us out every one of these times. He calls me up and says, yeah, is absolutely the first freshman to start for OU against Texas if everything goes according to plan Saturday at Auburn. So if everything goes right, for him, then he'll be starting. He'll be the first OU freshman to start against Texas in the Cotton Bowl. Good God, what a job that's going to be. I've been to the Cotton Bowl now, like I said, 21 years in a row. I think I've covered 20 of those things. I would pee my pants as a sports writer going down to being on the field for kickoff he's got to run down that ramp and say, come on, guys, follow me. Freshman quarterback. Not saying it can't be done. And what a story if it is. What a story if he pulls it off. But I think Texas right now is going, what? Really? A freshman? Oh, can't wait for that. They're licking their chops right now.
It'll be fascinating. I chuckle because my first OU Texas game covering in the press box, dealing with no one cares. It's not a woe is me, but what a press box experience that is. Because you don't have internet, your chair doesn't move. It's bizarre. The back and forth 2021, what the hell is happening? Caleb Williams, all this stuff. And the amount of times I just looked over at Hoover, just like, why are we even writing right now? Like, this thing is off the rails. Let's just wait. And Hoover's like, this is not how the job goes. You're going to learn Control A real quick, buddy. One of those things. Now, imagine actually playing on the field. I can't imagine it, frankly. And not everything's going to be fixed. We're going to dive into that here in a second. Brent Venables went in on Seth Luttrell in the politically correct way that a head coach can without just throwing guys under the bus.
Yep.
But one last thing on Arnold here before we move off of it. Brent Venables, he talked with us about how he had told Jackson that, one drive, one game, that stuff doesn't define a player. He's got a great career ahead of him. They still got a ton of faith in him. They need Jackson Arnold to stay engaged. And I don't mean to be this way, and I hate to put this stuff. I'm big on the vibes, and I hate putting this vibe out there, but Hawkins has the height, the speed, all that stuff. He's not as big as Jackson Arnold is, just as far as like Jackson Arnold, broader shoulders, stuff like that. And we were kind of worried about Jackson getting beat up behind this offensive line. Jackson, who was going to have to use his feet. That's why we talked about in that Temple game. Hey, man, you don't need to throw your throwing shoulder into one of these things here. You saw Hawkins have not one, but 2 touchdowns taken off the board by him being called down at the 1 yard line, the 6-inch line, taking some big shots. The offensive line's not getting better. It would not stun me. And I would say the same thing if Arnold was starting the rest of the year. I think that one of these guys is going to have to come in for a drive at some point the other time. So I know that so often right now in today's era of college football, you see former 5-star quarterback loses his job. The next dot connected is where is he going to transfer in the offseason? But much like in 2022 or 2021, excuse me, when Lincoln was preaching that they need Spencer Rattler, hell, I don't think I was standing by you in this app, but I turned to Jerry Ramsey when they had to bring Arnold in for the short yardage package. I was like, this is Rattler, the 2-point conversion at Texas. Arnold's the one that has practiced the short yardage stuff all week. They got to have him come in and make something happen. They got to keep him engaged because as much as I love Casey Thompson, love talking to him, as much as Oklahoma loves the brain of Casey Thompson, after a couple of big time injuries, Casey Thompson is not mobile enough to survive behind this offensive line.
Yeah, no, he's not. Yeah, and you're right. They're going to need both guys. And I'm not saying that to be they need to be good teammates and support each other. No, they're physically, literally going to need both quarterbacks to finish this season with as bad as this offensive line is. They're not just averaging 3 sacks per game. They're giving up 3 sacks every game. Literally every game they've given up 3 sacks. That's 12 for the season. You can't expect your quarterback to survive behind that. Neither one of these quarterbacks is a big, husky dude, 6'4", 220. There's none of that going on with either of these guys. They're both a shade over 6 foot, 6'1". I think Arnold might be 6'2", almost. Probably not. But just in terms of, body weight, musculature, thickness, whatever you want to call it, they're both a little on the slight side for a quarterback back there, major college quarterback that is going to be under the firing line, so to speak, of this offensive line. So they're absolutely going to need both guys.
Yeah, it'll be.
And maybe Casey. Maybe Casey as well.
They might. Certainly, they'll need Casey as a mentor. That's something Brent Venables asked about last, and he waxed poetic about Casey Thompson. Read about it, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. Casey's so nice, we quoted him twice on Wednesday on the website. Hoover and I were fighting over who gets to use what Thompson quotes. Is Casey's going to be essential, not just for guiding Jackson Arnold as a guy that Casey's been in a quarterback competition and been benched before. It is what it is. As much as preparing for all this stuff, Casey's been in big time games. The quarterback wasn't the only thing Venables touched on, and it didn't take the questions. He did it in his opening statement as well. The fan base has been yelling for weeks about Seth Luttrell. this is the closest I've ever seen Venables to like throwing one of his assistants or one of his players just flat out under the bus. We could go through and play the hits, but basically, the gist of it was Venables not happy with the game plan. Venables alluded to the fact, and when Brent Venables starts talking, when I'm a defensive coordinator and I'm doing this, and then he's rolled over the other side of the ball, he's like, I don't have a play in my playbook where I need someone to whoop a guy. I've got one defender on this side of the gap, one defender on this side of the gap. Two guys are there. He's alluded to the fact that the offensive line, he's not happy with the play calling. He's not happy with the approach. He was not happy, it sounded like, with the offensive staff's ability to identify what Tennessee's weakness is, what their strength is, how to go away from their strength, and how to play into their weakness. This was a Brent Venables like, Seth Luttrell, if you're not hearing me inside the walls of the Switzer Center, I will yell it out from the rooftop in the most public forum I have, which is basically shredding your entire operation for 20 straight minutes.
Yeah, and after he addressed it in his opening statement, he got a couple of questions about the kind of the state of the offense. My question, I think, was next to last in the queue, just because I guess that's where I chose to sit. But whatever.
Second row crew. It's the second row crew. That's what it is.
Second row, yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna have to steal somebody's first row seat from now on because I'm the first one there. Right? Week after week, I am the first one there every week. So just saying. Anyway,
I moved my chair to the front row. That's how I end up on the end by Jordan.
I noticed that. I'm gonna have to get a little savvy in me to get the earlier questions. Anyway, the question I asked, and I'll phrase it here as succinctly as I can. Brent, without giving any state secrets to Auburn, can you describe the offensive game planning process during the week, how you lead up to the game, who's doing what, how much collaboration there is between the position coaches and the coordinators, the co-coordinators, and then what you like about that process and maybe what you'd want to see tweaked or changed about that process? I'm not sure what I expected. I didn't expect an immediate acknowledgement. He kind of laughed and said, that's a pretty long conversation. Literally, he and I could sit and talk for 2 hours about the offensive game planning process. I didn't expect him to go for 2 hours, but I did expect, I hoped for, I shouldn't say I expected, I did hope for, well, the assistant coaches give us input on how these players are doing in certain drills and what strengths or weaknesses that certain players show, whether it's the offensive line, whether it's the receivers or the running backs and pass pro or whatever. Maybe there's a guy ahead, maybe there's a guy behind. We get that input from the assistant coaches, the position coaches. That then gets fed into the coordinator meeting where Joe, John, and Seth sit down and meet about the strengths of the opponent, where we can attack them and where we can expose them. And where our strengths are maybe go up against some of their weaknesses, we'll try to divvy that up and we'll try to decide who's got the edge in certain areas. And then we're in areas where we're deficient, those guys will identify those and we'll try to stay away from them on game day. Something that worked last week against Tulane might not work this week against Tennessee. That's kind of what I was hoping for. Didn't get anything close to that. He said something along the lines of, at one point, and I don't even know what this is. I transcribed it and I put it in the story. If we're all wrong, we're all right. So,
what he's talking about there is on the offensive line. I think it's an extension of his frustration with the O-line of the right guard and the center are getting split because the right guard has a kick call and the center. What he's saying is, even if the pre-snap picture says we need to slide protection to the right and we decide to slide to the left, if all 5 offensive linemen slide to the left and then the running back responds, like it basically, he's like, there is no perfect call. As long as we're all doing something together, it may not be correct, but if we're all wrong together, we're all right. And then it's kind of on the playmakers to figure it out from there. And that's not what's happening because you got guys going 5.
As long as they're all on the same page, as long as they're together. Doesn't matter if it's wrong or right. You want it to be right, but it's better if they're together. And they're not together right now. They've got, like you said, on the goal line, they're splitting, allowing people to come through unblocked, cross their face, whatever, and knock guys back into the end zone. That was a big one coming from the 2-yard line, especially where they just had a false start penalty. But Brent talked about you want to emphasize your philosophy of running the ball, or do you want to push it downfield? Do you want to attack downhill in the running game? You want to create explosive plays. We've talked about that on the podcast a lot, how they're one of the worst in the country at explosive plays. And by one of the worst, I mean 130 or less. There's only 133 teams going right now. OU's at the very bottom of the bottom. So that whole thing, what I was hoping for was he would express maybe some point out somewhere in the game or some dissatisfaction he had with, we game planned for this, but the game unfolded in a different direction and we didn't have a backup plan. Or we've got guys that are in the game doing things that are not their strengths, such as we've talked about Bauer Sharp being called on to come across the formation and kick out the defensive end, 270-pound defensive end, or coming into the formation being called on to crash down on the defensive end. He acknowledged, Bauer Sharp said Monday, I'm not a good blocker. I need to get better at blocking. I own that. I'm trying my best, but I need to get better. But yet we see more plays where they're running behind him or at him or hoping he can. And I'm like, if the dude can't block, don't run at him. And that's kind of what I would think Venables is saying in the staff room on Sunday morning after the game. Why are we calling these plays that we know are not going to work? I was hoping for some kind of clarity on that answer. Didn't really get it. And that's what you were saying about almost throwing guys under the bus. Let me ask you a question, Ryan. Let me ask you this. All right. In the year of our Lord 2024, quarterbacks have a little radio in their helmet. The offensive coordinator has a microphone, and up to 15 seconds on the play clock, the offensive coordinator can sit there and have a conversation with his quarterback. Give him all the information he needs pre-snap. Here's what you're looking for. I saw this on the last play. Be sure and watch out for that. I think they substituted. Their corner got hurt on the last play. They brought in a redshirt freshman. He might not be very good. Take a look. I don't know what they're communicating. I don't know what level of or the depth of communication that they're having. But it's 2024. It should be easier to play quarterback right now than ever before. Because of that line of communication that's never been there before. Every you see these signals and they're doing stuff like this in their hands and holding up cards and placards and signs, and screw that. You can talk to the guy now. You can speak English directly into his ear. There's also every series you come to the sideline, you get to sit down, take a Gatorade, talk to your buddies, open up the iPad and see what the previous series, the previous drive, what the defense was doing in real time. Ryan, it should be easier to play quarterback or to at least be an offensive coordinator in 2024 than it's ever been. And what Brent Venables has said several times is we're making everything look hard. I don't get it. Where somewhere down the line, there's a significant disconnect between the weekly game plan, who gets what information, how it's broken down, how it's absorbed, and how it's, put out to the team. And then on game days, you're calling plays that don't work. You're trying to run the ball up the middle, inside zone, against a defensive line that has been kicking your butt all night long. Now, let's do it again. I'm sure it'll work this time. And then the other part is, where's all that communication, all that information that you're getting? What are you doing with it? That's where Oklahoma's offensive coaching staff is falling very, very short to me.
Yeah, I wonder on the communication front, I wonder if that's happening. And Jackson Arnold was too inundated with information.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I did think there was a couple of telling moments across. It wasn't just one answer, but let me pull the two or three thoughts of things that stood out from Brent, where I think he was like trying to tell us what's happening without throwing somebody. He went and do a little, we'll talk about the RPO stuff here in a second. That deserves its own conversation.
That's a good one.
But he did talk about, hey, we have a guy that, okay, we're teaching him this. And last time he messed it up knowing he was supposed to hand the ball off And this time he just goes into it knowing last time I messed up, I was supposed to hand the ball off. I hand the ball off, and it's like, no, 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 no. Now the look is telling you to throw the football. Like it doesn't matter if you.
Yep.
I'm wondering if Jackson Arnold on the RPO stuff was learning when he was at like what the actual mistake was, or if he just knew, hey, the last time that we ran this version of it, I handed the ball off, but they wanted me to throw it. So he just walks up to the line of scrimmage, is like, now I need to throw it instead of hand, which is not how any. I mean, you should just be counting, bro. Like I play in EA college football. I can't run an offense. I can tell you when I should be handing the ball, when I should be throwing it. Now, do I throw interceptions because I'm off with the game? Duh. But that's not. I do the right thing to start because I can count. That's what you're doing. You're counting. That's all you're counting, and you're reading one guy. So I don't know what's going on there, but then that's on the communication front. But then you take the step back, talking about that safety. Brent Venables said these words basically: "We didn't rep that in practice. That wasn't in the game plan, and we called it on the goal line."
Yeah.
If that doesn't tell you everything about Brent Venables' frustrations of it was not the game plan was not to run right up the gut at Tennessee, yet in the big moment, that's what's happening. Brent Venables talked about our job as coaches, find what they do well, nullify it, find what they don't do well, attack it. This game plan on Saturday, and it's weird that I'm going to compare these two things because one of them is maybe the best offense we've ever seen in college football, and then whatever garbage Oklahoma's rolled out for 4 weeks. Going into the Orange Bowl in 2018, no one knew what Hollywood Brown was going to be able to do, but you did know Oklahoma had an explosive rushing attack, a capable quarterback, more than capable, a Heisman Trophy winner in Kyler Murray, and the big question was going to be, what could Oklahoma do with the interior of Alabama's defensive line? And for a month leading up to that game, all of us losers who don't know anything about football were saying, I bet Oklahoma probably tries to stress the edges of Alabama's defense first, make that group run side to side, wear them down, and then you can come back in the third and fourth quarter and try and drag them. What did Lincoln do? He left Hollywood Brown out there way too long when it was clear he couldn't do anything, and he tried to run right up the middle. It was an arrogant game plan from a arrogant offensive coordinator. Lincoln's an incredible offensive coordinator. He is an arrogant offensive coordinator, and the numbers, he's been that good. It's earned arrogance. What we saw on Saturday was an arrogant game plan from an awful offense. It was, we haven't been able to run up the middle at all year. We're now going to play the best interior defensive line we've seen, the best defensive line, period. And suddenly you're going to be able to run up it made no sense. I think that's where a lot of Brent's frustration comes from.
I think you're right. The simple fact that, and another thing on the RPOs, I mean, you and me, the RPO might look complicated, right? What's that defensive end doing? What's that outside linebacker doing? What's that safety doing? Is he coming down? Whatever his key is, he's supposed to read it and make a reaction in a second. Okay, either you take the football or I'm going to throw it over here. It's like, we've seen OU a triple option, right, for generations. Execute it. You're reading the defensive end. Is he crashing or is he staying? Give, keep, pitch, whatever it is. I messed around with some of that in high school. I didn't run it, and I certainly wasn't a quarterback, but I understood the concepts of it when I was 16 years old. Now you switch it to an RPO, and Brent on Tuesday actually said the words, give the damn ball, hand the damn ball off, something like that. Can't remember exactly what the quote was, but that was his reaction to, if we don't know what to do with the ball, let's simplify it for them. Let's take the autonomy away from them and say, here's what we want you to do. And he's calling for not the removal of the RPO, but maybe don't use it so damn much, is kind of the way I got the sense that he was wanting to proceed with the offense.
It also just seemed like, and he told the anecdote on Monday night at his coach's show about his Palms defensive call he used to call, where the corner's reading one wide receiver, and the issue with that is that players can make the wrong read. So you might be in the perfect call, but you're giving the player a decision to make, or you could be in a quote-unquote worse call. It may not cover off everything from an IQ, X's and O's whiteboard standpoint. But here's the thing about college football. Busted plays happen all the time, even from great teams. It's an imperfect game. The best teams flub up a bunch. It's about What can you do? Are you all working together? Stuff like that. Don't make the catastrophic bust or the catastrophic turnover. But other than that, you can make chicken salad out of whatever. You know what I mean? That's what you're going with. And that's what, when we roll this thing forward, how different do we think the offense is going to look with Hawkins? How different is it going to look at Auburn? The receivers are still hurt. We're going to talk about this. We're going to link up with Daniel Locke from Auburn Tigers on his side, but here in a little bit, we'll talk about Jacoby Johnson. That's a desperation move from Oklahoma, having to pull someone from the defense to play offense. That's not going to get much better. The offensive line still stinks. That's not going to magically change overnight. The running backs, as a result of all of that, are struggling. Like, that's not going to change overnight. Auburn is not going to suddenly respect Oklahoma's run game just because Michael Hawkins is there, because Oklahoma hasn't run the football well for 4 straight games. Like, none of that is going to change.
Right.
So when you look at it structurally, it's what Brent Venables has talked about. It's, hey, I think the gist of it is, as an offense, they've incorrectly read the RPOs a bunch. So why are you still calling the types of plays that they're struggling with? If the offensive line can't block it, if the quarterback can't read it, just call a straight run play where no one's making that decision. They're just blocking up a run play, or just call a pass play. I think that's Venables' frustration, because we can hammer the 2022 defense all you want, but halfway through the year, Venables abandoned the odd front. He started to just roll the 4-man out there. They didn't get much better, but they did have less coverage busts a little bit. Then it started to be that they were out on the field too long. They didn't have the depth. They were tired. Danny Stutzman felt like he was being dragged in fourth quarters because he had to play 5 million snaps. But that's an elite defensive coordinator in year one going, they obviously can't grasp this. Let's try and find the handful of things we can do and figure it out. That has not happened on the offensive side of the ball through 4 weeks. And I think that is the biggest, like, what's going to look different. I think you're going to see them try to simplify on that front against the Tigers.
I mean, ask yourself this: has Seth Luttrell, as the play caller and offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, has he gotten his quarterback benched by calling plays that are not to his strength, by putting him in situations that he's not going to succeed? Again, a lot on the O-line, a lot on the receivers, a lot on the injuries. We get it. But just in general, Seth's not had a good first 4 games. And I think this falls at his feet every bit as much as Jackson's.
Yeah, it's like everything we talked about. No one thing is on any one person, because it's all been bad for the offense. As far as the quarterback goes, when you have those just massive catastrophic turnovers, I think on Saturday night, Brent Venables owed it to the defense to try something different.
Yeah, for sure.
And it goes all the way back to the first question he was asked on Tuesday was, how do you prevent the locker room from splintering? He talked a lot about culture, all that stuff. One game does not make a broken locker room, but football teams are not dumb. Like, you can tell when something's not working, when guys have lost faith. If you don't at least try something else, that's when the faith gets pointed to the coaches, as opposed to just that guy or this or that, or maybe it was just a bad day. I think Venables owed it to the fans almost for the atmosphere that they brought, and to the defense to make a change on Saturday night. Now, that doesn't mean he owed it to them to make the change on Monday. I think that was just the right move. But we'll leave it here with this before we hop over and start breaking down Auburn for a little bit. Do you get the vibe that offensive coaching entire group is now coaching for their jobs the rest of the year? Because I never really felt that about Ted Roof in 2022, because that felt like they knew it was going to take longer, or they knew it was going to take a year to learn the defense. Maybe they didn't think it was going to take that long to learn the defense. It feels like to me, this is year 3 of Venables, the head coach, year 1 of Luttrell, the OC. But I don't think that it does not feel like Brent Venables is going to give him 3 years to figure it out if the improvements don't start revealing themselves soon.
Yeah, and I think Seth would be at the top of the list. I think there's some concern about Bill Bedenbaugh's ability to start a season fast. He hasn't done that in certainly the last 3 years, where he's been, the offense has started slowly for whatever reason. Rebuilt offensive line takes a while to gel, all that stuff. We get it. It takes a while to gel. That's what spring football's for. That's what the summer's for. That's what training camp is for. 4 games into the season, and the offensive line is as bad as it's ever been. Why is that happening? What is the offensive line coach's role in the offensive line playing piss poor for the first month? So you need to ask that question. I don't think Emmett Jones is in any trouble. the dude is a recruiting nightmare for other teams, and all his players are hurt. So he bears no real responsibility other than let's get those young guys together a little faster, maybe. If I'm Brent Venables looking at him, hey, you got any young guys? You got any freshmen for me? See if get along that way. Joe John Finley is kind of fallen.
What does Joe John do? I'm
I
sorry.
don't.
I know that we
He's
usually have more
co-coordinator.
tact.
Yeah, he's co-coordinator. What does that mean?
I know he's a co-coordinator, but last year the tight end room was an absolute disaster.
Yeah, that was bad.
They could only play Austin Stogner, and we talked about this in the spring before the injuries happened. Stogner was not going to be the same dude physically because we all knew how serious that injury was that he sustained at Oklahoma. This year, there was a great deal talked about Devon Mitchell. He's a guy that reclassified early. Brent Venables went on a big long thing about his maturity and his development, and how he's coming along. I don't put that at the foot of any coach. Yeah, it's like I don't necessarily put that.
All that stuff.
Yeah, like they can recruit a guy, and he reclassified. At some point, the players got to own the stuff that they're supposed to do as well. But Bauer Sharp's not made the kind of impact we thought he was. Jake Roberts is limited. I know that Cade McIntyre was banged up. He was probable and then was dressed out, stuff like that. But outside of Braden Willis, the tight ends have been a non-factor. Yep. Devon Mitchell came to Oklahoma because Michael Hawkins came to Oklahoma. I don't think it's because it was this great big-time recruiting job that Joe John Finley did. I mean, Hawkins was his recruiter. That was his primary recruiter. What does Joe John do?
Yeah, and on game days, it's hard to figure out what Joe John exactly does. He's walking up and down the sidelines, and he's talking to guys, and he's got a headset on. What's his role? That's what I was hoping Brent would shed a little light on with my question. And then the running backs. Listen, DeMarco Murray is a favorite son of this program, and everybody loves him for his running back ability and his Dallas Cowboy days, right? His NFL acumen that he busted all those numbers, and certainly he's recruited some very fine running backs. We saw last year, first 5 games, 6 games, 7 games, it was a running back by committee. I don't know who the best guy is. None of them are really performing well. The whole more than first half of the season, the first almost 2/3 of the season last year. Then you fast forward to this year, same thing's happening. We got a bunch of guys. Well, who's the best? Well, we don't know. Why don't you know? Well, because none of them are standing out. Why are none of them standing out? Well, because I don't know. At some point you get to the bottom question, and they don't have an answer. There's no answer for why Javante Barnes is averaging 3 yards a carry, and Gavin Sawchuk is averaging 1.5 yards a carry, and a freshman talent like Taylor Tatum is averaging whatever he is, 4 yards a carry or something like that. At some point, talent has got to win out. But I mean, I see the bind that DeMarco's in. I'm not saying he's got guys that are kind of a little bit pigeonholed at the running back position. You can't put Taylor Tatum out there to protect the quarterback. We've seen that. You can't do it. He's got to get some rawhide on him. He's got to get some bark on him, so to speak. He's got to get some toughness and some ruggedness to him to be able to protect the quarterback.
Yeah, and it wasn't DeMarco's fault that he wasn't here in the spring because he was playing baseball, and they knew that.
He's a little behind, and so you can't play a guy that's a little behind, especially in pass pro. And then the other guys, they're calling plays for Gavin Sawchuk that are not in his wheelhouse. Here's an inside zone. There's 9 guys in there. Good luck finding a seam because our offensive line stinks. Get Gavin Sawchuk on the edge. And again, play calling, that's not DeMarco's deal, but just I don't know. I think what you said, job security for the offensive staff, I think it's worth reviewing at the end of this season, however it turns out.
Well, and outside of so much of this on the offensive line that I hesitate to heap a ton of blame on DeMarco, but this is not the first year that we have had a conversation about running backs where let's forget blocking, right? It's not the first year that Brent Venables has had to say, at some point, guys just got to win. Jeff Lebby said it. At some point, guys just got to win. You got to make somebody miss. Now, for this year's team, that would probably look like making someone miss 5 yards in the backfield. And it may not be appreciated, but at least you can tell it was blocked up for -4 yards and they got back to the line of scrimmage. Right now, if it's blocked up for 3 yards, they're getting 3 yards. So it's tough to pilfer through, but it's not like the running backs are covering themselves in glory and making up for the absolute tire fire in front of them. So it's tough. And part of this thing's going to be too, Sometimes I think there's some sensationalized stuff, and I get that everybody has a job, and usually nationally. So what I'm talking about, the guys that aren't covering things every single day, not taking in every bit of context, just come in, have to drop something down. But there's been some national stuff about like whatever happens the rest of the year with Seth Luttrell, this offense, whatever happens in the offseason, Brent Venables faded Oklahoma can be tied to that. I don't necessarily disagree with that. This was Brent's hire, and we all agree this is not. I'm not trying to revisionist history this. We all agreed this was a safe hire, a promotion from within. But I think we all thought Seth Luttrell would be a great option. He's been a head coach before. He'll understand the game control stuff. He was all the charted out offensive stuff that he worked at before North Texas. Excellent. Always showed improvement. This has been a disaster through 5 weeks. It literally, I was telling Eddie on radio, it looks like the offense does not practice.
That's what I said at Saturday night. Did I not say those very words Saturday night? Does this team even practice?
Yeah. And so, and that's something that I don't think like Brent Venables ran away from that by putting all the blame on Luttrell or anything. But I think that Tuesday was an acknowledgement of, I get it. This was my choice. And I'm telling you right now, I have told them cut the RPOs. I have told them we're not running up the middle against Tennessee's defensive line. From there, I don't know what else to do other than fire people. Like he didn't say those words, but that's kind of the energy I got.
Yeah, same. I'm with you.
So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting for sure. Like I said, that wasn't everything. We've got some Jacoby Johnson stuff. He got into that. A random Dillon Gabriel anecdote that his cop fire, all that stuff. We'll dive into all that as 55 minutes, a ton to break down from the Oklahoma press conference. But up next, we're going to step out of OU land and head to the Plains. We're going to link up with Daniel Locke, Auburn Tigers on SI, to break down Auburn and everything Hugh Freeze is going to be throwing at Oklahoma. Stick with us. That's coming up right now. All right, welcome back in. We are joined today by Daniel Locke of Auburn Tigers on SI, giving us the breakdown for everything Auburn. And this one's a really, I don't know, if you're a sicko, this could be a fun conversation because it feels like these two teams have pretty similar issues. But Daniel, what's up, man? How's the week? How's the first 4 weeks, 5 weeks of the season been for you guys?
Yeah. Hey, Ryan. Hey, John. I really appreciate you guys having me. 5 straight home games out of the gate's a grind for the players, for the fans, for the media, for sure. Haven't had much of an opportunity to slow down, but if you're a member of the Auburn Tigers, you're just not where you want to be right now, and I'm sure we're going to unpack that a lot here.
Yeah, let's just dive in. Auburn is in a very similar spot to Oklahoma as far as quarterback controversy, things like that. On the Oklahoma end, Brent Venables offered a ton of clarity. Monday, he just came out and said, it's Hawkins, go for it. We've talked about this. What's the situation right now with Auburn as they've kind of gone back and forth, it looks like, from afar?
Yeah, so Peyton Thorne throws 4 interceptions against Cal, could have had as many as 6, to be honest, and then loses the starting job heading into New Mexico week. Hank Brown lights it up against a group of 5 opponent. That's all well and good, but we're in the SEC. We're not in the MAC, and we're not in the Midwest Athletic Conference. So we need to see how you do against SEC competition. And he didn't live up to what he was able to put on the field against New Mexico when Auburn took on Arkansas last week. He threw 3 interceptions, could have had more, and was benched at halftime in favor of Peyton Thorne, who once again threw an interception in the second half, but led Auburn on a little bit of a comeback. And you can argue that interception wasn't entirely on Thorne because it was tipped up by Cam Coleman. But still, at the end of the day, it falls on the quarterback, especially because there was another few reads on that play that could have been a little bit better. And that's been the main thing, is these interceptions are really holding Auburn back. And Thorne threw 10 interceptions all season last year, and he's already got 5, and we're through 4 games. So definitely not where this offense thought it would be.
Daniel, the thing at Oklahoma is the quarterback's not been good. Jackson Arnold obviously got benched. One of the reasons he's not been good is he's not got a lot of help. They've had 4 injuries to their top 4 wide receivers, have kept them out pretty much the whole season. They've had a revolving door at just about every position on the offensive line at one point or another, right guard being the exception. Are the Auburn quarterbacks going through anything similar, or is it more of just a shock that the quarterback's not playing well because they've got talent clearly.
Yeah. There was a little bit of a similar situation, particularly for the Cal game and the New Mexico game. I think they were without two starting offensive linemen against New Mexico, so some things had to get shifted around. At wide receiver, they've been pretty healthy. They were without Cam Coleman, the star freshman, against New Mexico, and he was very limited against Arkansas, only catching 2 passes for 15 yards. But injuries haven't really been as a serious issue for Auburn on offense as they have on defense.
It's been kind of weird to watch from afar because I was piffling through some Hugh Freeze quotes this week, and he's not necessarily wrong. Like the scheme's not bad. The Auburn offense on paper, very explosive, great rushing attack. When the quarterbacks aren't throwing the ball away, it seems like they're moving the football. It is that really like the one thing holding this Auburn offense back is simply just the fact that they keep coughing the ball up?
I agree. I think so. There are wide open receivers on every single play. And the offensive line's been blocking good. Like one of Auburn's turnovers against Arkansas, Damari Alston carries the ball 36 yards down to the Arkansas 1, and he has wide open running lanes and then fumbles the ball into the end zone, which you can't do that in this league. You literally take a touchdown off the board doing that. And you just can't have that. And it's just these mental errors that they can't seem to get past because, like you said, the scheme's been fine. There are wide open receivers on every single play, whether it's Peyton Thorne or Hank Brown or even Holden Garner on the 2 plays that he's gotten in this year. They, most of the time, have plenty of time to get rid of the ball. They don't have to escape the pocket the second the ball snapped, which has been the case for Auburn for the better part of 4 or 5 years now. So it really is just mental errors that are causing these mistakes.
Daniel, thoughts on the running game? Real quick, if you look at the passing game, you see a guy like Keandre Lambert-Smith averaging 28 yards a catch, got 5 touchdowns already this season. He's been unbelievable, but they're not. I don't know. It seems like it's been a little bit lopsided, if you would. 178 yards a game, but it's not all 178 yards in every game. I mean, they've beat up on some softer opponents and struggled against the good ones.
Yeah, it's definitely been weird to see, especially because this was expected to be Auburn's biggest strength offensively heading into this season because you have Jarquez Hunter back, you have Damari Alston back, you have Jeremiah Cobb back. Really unfortunate situation. You don't have Brian Battie because of the tragic situation with him and his brother this offseason. But yeah, and the offensive line's better. So you would expect them to be running all over opponents. And after Auburn's season opening win against Alabama A&M, Hugh Freeze even said how he wanted to lean more on the run game. So it's been really surprising that they just haven't, especially since when they do it, it seems to work. Obviously, Jarquez Hunter had a costly fumble against Cal. I already talked about Damari Alston's real head-scratching fumble against Arkansas. So I think that this is going to be the week where Auburn really starts to lean on the run game.
You saw last week Oklahoma, as bad as the offense was, the defense did a really good job bottling up Tennessee's run game. What did Hugh Freeze kind of have to say about how he views this Oklahoma defensive front that certainly is a lot different than what Oklahoma defensive fronts have been for a good part of a decade?
Yeah. The main thing he said is he really just committed Brent Venables for the schemes he's been able to put together and just kind of talk about how multiple this Oklahoma defense is and how they can adapt and change based on what the opponent has on the field. And they're just very diverse in their coverage and can stop you in different ways.
Daniel, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Auburn's defense? I think they rank in the top 25 or 30, if I'm not mistaken, statistically in NCAA. But obviously, when you're 2-2 after 4 games of the season, you can identify some weak spots. What are your thoughts on how Auburn's playing defense right now, aside from the injuries in the secondary, which we'll get to in just a second?
Yeah, I think the pass rush has been really good. Auburn's not necessarily getting sacks at the level that they would like, but they're getting tackles for loss and they're getting quarterback hurries. Fernando Mendoza from Cal, Devin Dampier from New Mexico, and Taylon Green from Arkansas, none of them have really had time to settle into the pocket. they've all had to escape. And there's been varying levels of success they've had doing that. But ultimately, I think Auburn's defense has been really solid, especially like you kind of hinted at. They've been dealing with some injuries. They haven't allowed more than 24 points in a game this season, which is pretty solid, especially considering that they're probably on the field about 60 to 70% of the game.
Yeah, it feels like both defenses are going to be like, wait, the other team's allowed to strand their defense too. What's going on here? We mentioned it. It does feel like the one area, though, Auburn is pretty banged up is the secondary. I don't know if Oklahoma can actually take advantage of that with their inability to block anybody, but what's the situation on the back end of Auburn's defense if Mike Hawkins is able to have any kind of time to look downfield?
Yeah. So Kayan Lee, who is a sophomore cornerback, is Auburn's. I'm not sure about his status, but he's been banged up this year. I think he's going to be good to go against Oklahoma, but he won't be at 100%. Keontae Scott's been dealing with a hamstring injury. He's a really solid in the nickel for Auburn, but I think he'll be good to go. Antonio Kite, who's a sophomore, and J.C. Hart, who is a sophomore, they're going to have to play a lot of snaps at corner. Jay Crawford, who's a true freshman, hasn't seen much game time, but Hugh Freeze said on Monday that they're going to have him ready to go. Because that's really what they're down to in the secondary.
Ryan, we want to switch gears to the stadium, the atmosphere, the road. Oklahoma's going on the road for the first time, and I'm coming out of SEC media days, and I'm like, wow, everybody really, really is afraid of Jordan-Hare Stadium, and Auburn has not been particularly good at Jordan-Hare Stadium in recent years, especially against ranked teams.
Yeah, what's the vibe of the 2-2 start? You mentioned that it was going to be 5 straight home games. Is this going to be like a Hornets nest Oklahoma's walking into, or is this an Auburn crowd that's going to be ready to groan and kind of turn on this offense at the first sign of any kind of more turnovers or adversity or stuff like that?
Sure. Well, one thing about Auburn fans is they will show up. So at least at the start of the game, it's going to be a raucous environment, and definitely a hard one for any true freshman quarterback to have to walk into. But just like any crowd, all it really takes to silence them is a quick start from the opponent. So if Oklahoma can get off to a fast start, score a touchdown early, and get a stop early, they could really prevent the crowd from becoming a factor. One game that comes to mind was the 2022 game against Penn State, which prior to kickoff, like I had my fingers in my ears. It was so loud in there, but 10 minutes into the first quarter, it was dead. And then Penn State goes on to win that game, I believe 42-12, which is one of the worst home losses in recent Auburn history. So the fans will be there. It'll be packed and it'll be loud to start. But if Auburn starts to fall apart like they did against Cal and like they did against Arkansas, that problem will take care of itself really fast.
Daniel, it's going to be wet too. We think we're pretty sure. You're telling us right now there's rain coming down. It's we're recording this on a Wednesday. We're flying in on Friday. What are you hearing about the hurricane?
Yeah. So the brunt of it. Well, first of all, it was supposed to hit tomorrow, but it hit today. So I'm hoping that means that by the time we get to Saturday, fingers crossed, that it'll be a little bit more dry. But no, if you're a Sooner fan making the trip down, bring your raincoat, bring your umbrella, because I think there is supposed to be some participation around kickoff. Precipitation, not participation.
Hopefully it clears up just because I'm kind of interested in whoever goes for Auburn and Hawkins having clean environments just to try and throw the football, because I'm not sure that what's going to happen as far as that. Last one for me, when Brent Venables took the OU job, he talked about it being the right time, right spot, right alignment. And he kind of threw Auburn under the bus a little bit unintentionally, I think, when he was close to taking that job, didn't do it. Does anyone around Auburn remember/care? Like, is there any extra anything, or is that just kind of one of those, hey, it's a coaching search, names are involved, whatever, we've got our own issues kind of thing?
I think okay. So one thing about Auburn fans is there's just any sort of delusion that you can expect. So going back to that, the 2020 coaching search is the one that when Venables was still the defensive coordinator at Clemson. That was the one where his name was really thrown around right under Hugh Freeze, who Auburn didn't go with at that particular time. So the real diehard fans probably still have that in their on their minds, but the more casual ones and just the ones who haven't been fans as long probably have kind of forgotten about that. But the things that I've seen in my mentions from just the most diehard Auburn fans were just really like throwing a wide receiver from 1989 under the bus. It's like, okay, like you need to let that one go. So to answer your question, there's probably 10,000 or so people who just really have a grudge against BV, but most people probably don't really care.
Yeah, have moved on. Well, let me ask you this, and we'll finish. We'll finish with this. Daniel Locke from Auburn Tigers on SI, kind enough to join us. Check out the travel preview piece that I wrote with a lot of contributions from Daniel. He's got a lot of recommendations. You can find that at Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com.
If I may, I left
Yeah.
out one really important recommendation.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Ross House Coffee. Ross House Coffee right next to campus is the best coffee shop in Alabama. I love Ross
on here.
House. I go there every morning.
I'm already there. I can't wait to. It's probably going to be a long line, but Ryan, we might have to make some time to do that. So, my final question is this: whether it's the university or the support staff or the coaches or the players or the fan base or in our case the media, our world has completely changed. We're no longer going to Waco and Lubbock, and we're no longer going to Ames and Manhattan and so on and so forth. We're now traipsing through the SEC, trying to get integrated into the culture, I guess, of the SEC. What's the SEC's view, maybe 30,000-foot view, on Oklahoma and to a lesser extent Texas joining the conference this year? I mean, it changed the scope of the league, and Greg Sankey's talked about it several times. But just from your perspective, what about OU coming into the SEC?
So I remember when it was first announced in the fall of 2021 that this was going to be the case, that at that point in time, most people didn't really think that it was really that great of a thing, particularly with Texas. Oklahoma, a lot of people didn't mind, but there's a lot of animosity towards Texas throughout the SEC because they've just got that big dog presence that really, since Colt McCoy got hurt against Alabama, they haven't lived up to that at all. And my first college football memory when I was really starting to get into it was Texas beating Georgia in the Sugar Bowl and Sam Ehlinger saying, "Longhorn Nation, we're back." And then they weren't back. And it took them years to even get back to relevancy. So just, I have a vendetta against Texas. That's one.
Lost a lot of money
I'm
on
sure
the
a lot of
horns
your
over the years in big games.
Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of your readers will be happy to know I'm not a Texas guy at all. But on the flip side, I remember a lot of people being excited about Oklahoma, particularly in basketball and baseball, just what those programs bring there, softball as well. But yeah, a lot of people think it's a good thing now that the programs are here. There's been talk about moving the SEC baseball tournament to Dallas, which I personally am so against because it takes place in Hoover, Alabama. My hometown of Helena, Alabama is right next door. So that's a nice 15-minute drive for me as opposed to it becoming a flight that I would have to make. So as long as we can keep more SEC centralized events such as media days and championship games and tournaments in places such as Nashville and Atlanta, I don't think many people will be too mad about these wonderful programs and a bunch of different sports joining this conference, which is the best. Like, if you're still arguing that the SEC is not the best, you just don't know college football.
It was big time on the atmosphere front. I mean, Oklahoma fans, they're not used to big time programs coming in, right, for non-conference stuff, but having the number of Volunteers fans on hand, that's just like, that didn't happen in the Big 12 because no one travels in the Big 12 that's not named Oklahoma or Texas. So it was a ton of fun. I'm excited for us to link up with you guys out there in Auburn for the first road trip. That's Daniel Locke of Auburn Tigers on SI. Thank you again so much for dropping by, and be sure to tell everyone where they can find all your stuff if they're looking to deep dive in on Auburn here as they get ready to rock and roll on Saturday.
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter or X at Daniel J. Locke. I'll have plenty of preview content from the Auburn perspective of this game ahead of Saturday. You can check us out at Auburn Tigers on SI.com. A lot of great stories coming out as game day gets closer. And this is an important game in the SEC this week. So not probably the second most important with what's going on up the road in Tuscaloosa. But I'm really excited for Auburn's first matchup against the Sooners.
Hey, we appreciate it. Thank you again for your time. And for us, Hoover and I will be back on the other side to close out the show, talk some Jacoby Johnson, all that fun stuff coming up on the Sooners on SI podcast. Thanks again to Daniel. And like we said, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com, where you can find Hooves travel, what you need to know, breakdown for everything Auburn, as well as everything from the entire week. All of our videos from all the guys we talked to practice on Monday night, Brent Venables on Tuesday, all the stories, all the content, Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com or Hoove's YouTube page, John Hoover Media. All right, let's dive back in, Hoove. Some other stuff coming out of the press conference. First off, Jacoby Johnson. That was a rumor that floated around on Sunday. I'm going to just hand up. I don't remember if George Stoya at Scoop or if OU Insider had the first report. I saw it from both guys. By the time we got to Monday, the coaches show, Brent Venables did confirm Jacoby Johnson will be sliding over to wide receiver. Talked about it a little bit on Tuesday. Here are the important things I think to lay out here. First off, Brent Venables basically said, cautioned everybody. I'm not expecting this to be like a massive move. This is not even paraphrasing. This is just like applying meaning to what Brent said. Don't expect Jacoby to go out and have 9 catches for 220 and 5 touchdowns, and the world's gonna, be set on fire. It was a long-term move, a move to help Oklahoma over the next 8 weeks. So my question when stuff like this always happens is how quickly can a guy who wasn't learning the offense learn it and actually be effective and all that stuff? But the areas that Brent Venables was very confident in, if you know anything about Jacoby, if you followed any of our stuff from Jacoby, from his recruitment, all that stuff, dynamic with the football, offensively and defensively, played a lot more wide receiver than corner at Mustang, and a guy that right now, big-bodied, physical, and he plays physical. And that's what Brent Venables said. You can see some guys that look physical. Jacoby's been playing physical on special teams and at corner, so he's going to bring a physicality to that position. I don't know what that's going to be, Hoove, as far as impact this week or even impact against Texas. And Brent did say if it's not working out, there's always a spot for him at corner. But this, to me, while I do think Jacoby can help the team, I think it screams that Andrew Anthony is not close. Brent Venables basically said, he actually said the words, Andrew Anthony has never really returned 5 snaps for Andrew Anthony. He does not look like a guy that's even trying to warm up during warmups. I also think this means, and on the SEC teleconference on Wednesday, Brent Venables declined to comment on Nick Anderson. We're recording right now at about 3:00 on Wednesday. We're not going to come back and wait till 8 p.m. for it to drop this week. So just Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com for the availability report. I don't think that Nick Anderson's close, and I don't know what Nick Anderson's status is the rest of the year. I don't know where his head's at as far as pro, getting back to Oklahoma this year, getting on the field. This screams they need more bodies because they just lost more numbers.
Yeah, I got the sense that Nick came back, played a handful of snaps last week, looked very tentative, looked very careful in his everything. He got slammed down to the ground a couple times, and he made a move on a guy one time, and immediately when he made that move, I think that was the second or third drive of the game, he immediately tapped his helmet and came out of the game and didn't come back. He does not look right. Real quick, Ryan, I'll say this. I don't know too much about where OU's medical staff is, but I would say that if you're talking about the offensive staff, is their job up for review at the end of the season? I would think maybe the possibility exists that some of the medical staff might have some of their jobs up for review. I know you can't keep a guy from getting hurt or whatever, but they've had guys that are almost ready and then fall back. They've had guys that are getting warmed up and then fall back, and then they're out for the season, and then they're there was like, 21 years covering this team, I've never seen injuries pile up like this, and I've never seen indecisiveness on whether a guy is able to play or not able to play. I've never seen it. So Brent's got something else maybe to look at in addition to the offensive staff. The status of the wide receivers is very troubling. Just their health, snake bit, bad luck, lightning bolts out of the blue, whatever you want to call it. Jacoby Johnson is very well could be a tremendous college receiver. Brent called him fantastic. He said he's not just good, he's fantastic like that. Like he expressed, this guy's unbelievable. Okay, so how come he's been, not playing wide receiver if he's fantastic at it? Because I know there's been other guys, but it's been 2 years. It's been since fall of 2022 that Jacoby Johnson has lined up and taken snaps at wide receiver. Is he going to be able to step in 1 week and make plays at Auburn? If he reps it and, Michael Hawkins has developed some kind of rapport with him, some kind of chemistry with him, sure. Maybe he'll make 2 or 3 catches, 4 catches. Maybe he'll break a tackle. Maybe he'll catch one in the end zone. That would be a great story. You can't go into the Auburn game saying, that guy's fantastic and he's going to win us the game. That's not possible.
Yeah, and I think that Brent himself was like, he even said, caution, this is a long-term.
Yeah.
He's looking at what's best for the team over the next 8 games, not 1 game from now. We shall see. I think part of that, too, is Eli Bowen coming on strong and being an excellent option for Oklahoma at corner. I think that's been big time and given OU and that defensive staff the cover to say, Oklahoma's going to be able to slide Jacoby Johnson over, not lose any of the depth they have at corner, and still be able to roll forward. So I think that in itself is also huge as far as when it comes to being able to pull the trigger and make this move. So we'll see there. Also, while we were talking, Nick Anderson never looked right, and Seth Luttrell called a play on 4th and 2 at midfield on the opening drive of the game, designed to go straight at Nick Anderson. What the hell is happening? Again,
on a short throw that was well covered, he's creating no separation. It's not like you're sending him down the sideline to pop one. It's like, go get yourself open 2 yards down the field and let's move the chains. That's not Nick Anderson's strong suit.
Certainly not on a bum quad. Like that explosion's not going to be there on a bum quad. That's the offensive brain trust right now.
No.
You can see it's frustrated. So that went there. We did have a little bit of a surprise, random addendum from Brent Venables. He was not asked about it, but we did get into it. When it looked like things were drying up, Brent, I don't know if he was responding to Tram's column or if he was responding to there was some national stuff too of again, some national people that had talked about Oklahoma ran off Dillon Gabriel just to bench Jackson Arnold or whatever. But Brent Venables did come through with the clarifying, not just statement, but 2 minutes on, again, Dylan Gabriel went through the entire season a year ago thinking he was going to go to the NFL. Then he got his grade back, and it was not what he thought it was going to be. Jeff Levy was gone. Dylan Gabriel wanted to go closer to home. The Oregon option was there. There was no running anybody off, which I do radio for 4 hours every morning, so we have to deal with a lot of stuff. I'm tired of this. Can give me 10 seconds? I understand that people say that Brent Venables is lying about this because the outside evaluation is everyone could see Dylan Gabriel's not an NFL quarterback. Fine. I'm telling you, Dylan Gabriel has said this. He said this to Sooner Scoop. Like he went on and did a big do-to-do, clearing the air after he was trying to say, I was not the one who tampered with Caden Green. That was Missouri's step. Dylan didn't say that, but that's what happened. Dylan, in his mind, was thinking 4th, 5th, 6th, late round draft pick. That means you're probably going to stay through camp and get to be the 2nd quarterback or the 3rd quarterback and have a chance to be on a roster. The feedback Dylan was going to get always that was going to prevent him from being a day 1 guy is he's too short and arm strength. And that was not going to change with another year of college football. So for Dylan, when we say NFL draft grade, Dylan wasn't thinking 1st round pick. Oklahoma wasn't thinking 1st round pick, but the grade he got back was an undrafted grade. That was the grade he got back, which was not what he was thinking. And at that point, that is when he made the determination, I've got another year of eligibility left. If I go closer to home, I can make more money than I would make as an undrafted guy. That's not anyone carrying water for anybody. And Brent Venables said there wasn't a conversation to even come back. I don't think that even if Dylan wanted to come, I think it would have played out the same way. But I don't understand what people don't understand about that. I'm done.
Well, so there's two. Okay, so the timing wise, Dylan went into Brent's office, said, "I'd like to meet with you. I'm opting out of the bowl game." That was in early December, right? Draft grades start to trickle in. Underclassmen draft grades start to trickle in, or not just underclassmen, but if you've got eligibility left in this case, with the 2020 COVID stuff, he's got eligibility left. Draft grades start to trickle in a few days after he would have opted out of the bowl game. Brent said he was disappointed that he didn't want to play in the bowl game, but then a week later he committed to, I think 6 or 7 days later he committed to Oregon. So the question is this: had Dylan made up his mind, I'm either going to Oregon State, Washington State, UCLA, USC, San Jose State, somewhere where he's going to be out west closer to Hawaii. Did that happen? There's a lag there, or did he go to Brent and say, "Hey, I'm opting out of the bowl game. I'm going to the NFL. Oh, and if I don't make the NFL, I'm going to transfer somewhere else." There's a lack of there's a few days missing, is what I'm saying, and decision making that needed to be. The determination goes from I'm opting out of the bowl game to go to the NFL to I'm transferring to Oregon. Those two things don't line up. So I'm just wondering what the full body of the final story of the truth is.
Yeah, because Brent had talked about, he said that there was, I don't have the exact transcript in front of me, that he had heard that Dylan was probably going to opt out of the bowl game after some of the offensive linemen had opted out. And that when he finally took the meeting, then he talked about that there was no conversation. Dylan had said that plus the levy, plus the I'm opting out and I'm leaving, all that. That's where that goes. My just think the people that latch on to the nobody thought he was going to be an NFL quarterback, you just misunderstand what that means. That you're either thinking first round or bust. And that has frustrated me to no end for like 9 months. I'm just like, sorry. So you got the other end of therapy podcasting, Hoover. I'm sorry to put that on. The other stuff I think is totally fair.
Yeah.
Some of the timeline stuff, but that particular thing that people are latching on to, stop latching onto it. I think you're misreading that part of it, where no one thought, I don't think even Dylan, that he was going to get a first round grade or anything like that.
And don't forget, this is where we're at in college football today. I was going to give you a quick name. I can't remember the kid's name. Sluka, Matthew Sluka from UNLV, quarterback. Got him 3-0. I don't know if they're ranked this week or not. I think they might be. And he decides, I'm going to opt out of the rest of the games of this season because there was some NIL stuff that was promised to me that they haven't delivered on, so I'm not going to play for him. That's a perfect example of where we're at with quarterbacks today in college football, where it's gotten to with NIL and the transfer portal. And that's what I'm wondering about Dylan was he going to be a guy that, ultimately, was he ever coming back to Oklahoma next year for 2024? Probably not. And there's two reasons why. Number one, again, this is where we're at. Somebody at some point communicated with Dan Lanning and the Oregon NIL group at some point, we think, maybe, possibly, hey, you could earn this much NIL at Oregon. Hey, we got a Nike package over here that's going to blow your socks off. Hey, come to Oregon, and it might not be Dan Lanning. I'm just saying someone who represents Oregon's NIL interests, right? So there's that. He's looking at what he got at Oklahoma, and he got to do some Schwab commercials and stuff like that. Or you get to go be a Nike rep, right? Which would you take, right? So there's that. And then the other thing is Jackson Arnold, Johnny 5-star, signed on the dotted line, played in games last year, showed at BYU he's ready to take this team on to the next level. And Dylan's like looking around going, they're going to what? And Ryan, we haven't even mentioned the thing where I'm 99% sure it was Brent at some point, I think in the spring, that said Dylan was always welcome back this year, and it was going to be an open competition between him and Jackson. If you're Dylan Gabriel, That's like, what? Bull crap. I'm the quarterback. I've been starting for 2 years, and you're going to bring this 5-star in to start or compete with me? In retrospect, we know who would have won that competition. Dillon Gabriel would have won that competition. And then what? Then you've got another 5-star quarterback coming to Oklahoma who says, what? I'm not winning the job? Fine, I'll leave. And he transfers out. And I just don't think Brent wanted to start the Brent Venables era under the specter of, damn, we lost a 5-star quarterback. We signed a 5-star quarterback and he didn't even stay 1 year. The previous guy had that problem with 5-star quarterbacks. Not me. I don't want that problem. I want to be able to say, if we're bringing in a 5-star, we're bringing in the Gatorade National Player of the Year. We need to keep this kid on staff. We need to keep him here on the roster as long as possible to build around him. Dylan, thanks for everything you did. Have fun at Oregon or the NFL or wherever you end up. That's how that thing shook out. Anybody who's not following what Jackson Arnold's role was in Dylan Gabriel's decision is deluding themselves.
Oklahoma took a gamble. It did not pay off.
Yeah.
5-stars miss.
They took a bet and they lost.
Oklahoma misses on a lot of 5-stars. Not necessarily this staff, but through the history of Oklahoma football, the modern recruiting era, 5-stars don't end well. I'm not saying you shouldn't recruit 5-stars. That's lunacy, but it happens.
I have a question. Jason
Yes.
White was a 3-star. Jason White was a 3-star. I think he got his 4th star after Miami and Oklahoma came along. Jason White was a 3-star. Sam Bradford was a 3-star. Baker Mayfield was a 2-star, if that. Kyler Murray was a 5-star. Of course he was, but he went to Texas A&M first, right? The whole point is Oklahoma, not just you don't need to be a 5-star. Oklahoma's best quarterbacks have been 2-stars and 3-stars and 3.5 stars, 4 stars. Just so anybody who just falls in love with 5-star quarterbacks just because somebody put a 5-star next to their name, come on, grow up. OU's best quarterbacks have been guys who were not 5-stars.
Yeah, it's like Caleb Williams, 5-star, awesome. Like Spencer Rattler, 5-star, miss. You know what I mean? Like that's what happens when recruiting. That's why you stack 5-stars and 5. Georgia's hoarding 5-star guys, and for a year, Stetson Bennett was it
right.
happens. Let it go. Be mad at the development, not at how it. Anyway, okay. Last little thing here. Is it overstating this, Hoove, to say like this is a program game for Oklahoma? Because if I'm on right, whoever loses this game is not going to a bowl game. I believe that between Auburn and Oklahoma and everything that shakes out after that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure to put on a defense that's getting no support. It's a lot of pressure to put on a true freshman making his first start. But welcome to Oklahoma. Every game has an impact, and you're going to play in a bunch of pressure-filled games, regardless if your offensive line sucks or not.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. This is a make or break game, I think, for both teams. But if you look at Auburn's got 2 wins right now. They've got Texas A&M, they've got Louisiana Monroe, they've got Vanderbilt, and they've got Kentucky. They've got 6 winnable games down the stretch. At Missouri is not unwinnable, but I think when you put the full scope of Oklahoma's schedule on there, I think this is absolutely a program game for Oklahoma. If you're the Oklahoma Sooners, right now, don't get me wrong, I know Auburn's won a national championship more recently than OU has. But if you're the Oklahoma Sooners, if you're the blue blood, winningest this and most conference that and most Heisman's and most all that stuff, if you're OU, this is not a game you can lose. This is not a game where you say, you know what? It was our first year in the SEC. Cut us some slack. You know what? We were missing some offensive linemen or our receiver core was not healthy. It's okay that we lost this game. No, Auburn, this is a mediocre Auburn team coming off a bad season. You need to go beat Auburn's backside bad. Get your act together, get your stuff straightened out, go in there and score 40 points. Probably easier said than done. I know. But no, man, this is not an opponent. This is not a game that, it's one of those games that's going to, like you said, get you to a bowl game. Ryan, this schedule's so tough. I'm looking at it going, 6-6, maybe.
The same slice and dice you with Auburn's schedule. South Carolina is they're just fine at best. Missouri has shown that they're probably more a product of their schedule than the number 5 team in the country. Are they more consistent than Oklahoma right now? Absolutely, but that they're not a top 10 team.
Yeah.
Ole Miss looks like a wagon. Alabama looks like a wagon. Texas is a wagon. LSU, who the hell knows, week to week, stuff like that. But if you don't start showing progress on fixing things now, then you can't get to South Carolina should be a win. LSU should be a win. Missouri should be. This team is going to keep them in all these games, I think, except for maybe one. I think 2009, there will be a Texas Tech. And I think Oklahoma fans hope it's not going to be against Texas, but one of these teams is going to take it behind the woodshed because it's going to break at some point if they keep getting no support. But you have to turn the corner to be able to say they've at least shown the offense can move in some of these games, and that starts this week against a really, really banged up secondary. We'll see. We will see. That's why you got to be Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com for all of our coverage all throughout the game. Hoover and I, boots on the ground, on the plains, live blog, world famous. It'll be humming. And I might live blog the Braves game on Friday night. I'm so stoked. I might even throw that content up there. But up until then, I don't know what the status of the post-game pod is going to be. This is like stuff that you guys don't need to know, but the Auburn press box is a pretty hard. It closes 3 hours after the game. Hoover and I only dream of podcasting 3 hours after a football game. So we may be podcasting in a car. We may be podcasting at a restaurant. I think poor Josh Calloway might shoot us if he is having to ride with us back and forth. And he's like, I'm not sitting through your pod silently. What the hell's going on? So it will be up at some point. How it's going to get done, no clue. So be sure that you're following Sooners on SI podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating or review. That's super helpful there. And then look for on the YouTube page, John Hoover Media. Elsewhere, before we get out of here, quick FYI. I know it's insane to say this. Next week's a bye week. Wednesday night next week, Oklahoma softball, fall ball starts. So at some point, probably Wednesday morning, I'll have your fall preview, albeit all those games, obviously. So that coverage is going to start coming. Maybe some good vibes for Oklahoma fans to get to know another young team working through it. But other than that, we're full speed ahead on Oklahoma and Auburn. Be sure to follow us all along the way on X at Sooners on SIs, the big catch-all. You can follow Hoove at John E. Hoover. I'm _Ryan Chapman. We got our guy Dakota at Dakota Gregory. Bryce is at McKinnis Bryce. And Randall Sweet still doing a bunch of recruiting stuff for us. Big shout to him, Randall Sweet 5. But that'll do it for us. We'll talk to you from somewhere in either Atlanta or Auburn on the postgame pod. We'll be back here a bye week Thursday to break everything down and all that. But until next time, big shout to Hoover for being along with us. This has been the Sooners on SI podcast. We'll talk to you guys from the Eastern time zone here in a couple days.